Hey folks, welcome to yet another episode of Common Sense Live. Thank you for joining us today, for giving us 1 hour of your time. Our hope is in this hour to have you think differently, to have you engage with us here on a range of different issues, from breaking stories to a debate, and also some light things, hopefully, for you to take away with you. I'm one of your hosts today, MT Omni. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Common Sense Network, and I'm joined, of course, by...
Hey, Afshan Desozalodi, cultural editor at Common Sense Network, but also writer and organizer when I'm not doing this stuff.
All right. That's the kind of intro we're looking for.
Okay. It's a Wednesday evening. Let me be slow. Let me have my...
No, it's okay. Folks, you're more than welcome to start commenting and sharing with us where you're from. If it's your first time listening, we like to engage with our viewers. This is not the show where you just watch. It's one that you can get involved in. So if you want to say something, you want to tell us where you're watching from, you got a perspective, we can actually show your comments on the screen. So feel free to get involved. We want you involved. Afshan, how's your week been? I mean, you mentioned that you're feeling a bit slow today. Has it been a long week? Has it been a good week? Have you been looking forward to Boris Johnson's next announcement? What's going on?
Am I looking forward to Boris Johnson's next announcement? Yes. Do you know what? I don't know. I want to leave, but I also don't want to leave. I want to stay. I don't want to. I feel a bit like Boris Johnson's statement at the beginning, which was, go out of the house, don't go out of the house, work. Go to work, don't go to work, eat out to help out, don't eat out at all, save the economy, save yourselves, save your grandma, save your grandpa, don't hang out with your friends. I think that's the kind of state I'm in right now. It's a constant kind of like moving backwards and forwards. And I'm sure a lot of other people are in the same boat as me.
Yeah.
I just want the sun, I want the gym, and I just want it to be a Friday. Can it be a Friday?
Yeah, listen, you're not alone. I think this last week gone by, I probably had my first moment where I thought, you know what? I'm actually tired of lockdown. For a while, I've been just braving it, but this last week, I did have a kind of a mini snap, and I'm sure I'm not alone. Guys, let us know in the comment section, how are you feeling about lockdown still? What's going on? How are you handling things? Do let us know. And also, just before we get into the top stories, this is your time to share the stream. So send it to 2 or 3, 4 people that you think need to be cheered up, right? Or also maybe interested in some of the discussions we're having. Let's get straight into the top stories, because we've got some interesting ones. Of course, we just finished talking there about Boris Johnson. Boris Johnson actually is going to give a statement, or is going to address the British public again on the 22nd of February, so which is a couple of days' time. And what he wants to do is, he's revealed and the Express reported this, that he wants this lockdown we're currently in to be the last lockdown. And so what he's going to do on the 22nd is tell us all the roadmap out of the lockdown we're currently in. He's confident that due to the persistent falling rates in cases, which has only happened for 4 days, we should probably calm down. And the fact that over 15 million people have now received the first dose, and they've really just destroyed the government targets. And I think we ought to kind of credit the government where they're doing well there. The COVID vaccine rollout has been pretty interesting. But ultimately, what he's saying is, and the deputy chairman of the COVID recovery, Steve Barker, also said the same thing, is they expect restrictions on the hospitality industry to be lifted by May. So May is looking like the time that things may get back to normal. Sorry, I know there's a pun there. It wasn't on purpose. But in May, things may get better.
This is like the end of May jokes. Do you remember that? The end of May and June.
Oh, yeah. Let's make June. That was a good... But what do you think about the story? Are you... I mean, it's kind of like the boy who cried wolf, isn't it? Well, how do you feel about it?
I feel like there is one really good way to make this the last lockdown that we ever experience. It's just we never leave it. And it's quite terrifying, actually, Boris Johnson's statement to say this is the last lockdown that we'll have, because we are nowhere near. Well, we're actually where we were in June last year, I think. So in terms of like the rate of COVID spreading. So actually, we're where we were when we should have continued in lockdown before we did the Eat Out to Help Out scheme, before all the students went to school and people went to university. So we might be in lockdown for all through summer, and that, then it would be truly the last lockdown we ever.
Well, here's what's interesting. So this is us here in the UK. Now, folks, here's a little bit of a surprise for you. We won't be doing this alone. You know, we've got lots of guests coming on. We're talking about the UK. I want to bring in one of our contributors from America, actually, and find out what's happening with COVID down there, how they're feeling about COVID. We know Biden's in now. You know, how long what's going to happen with Biden? You know, is America going to move out? Because I know in different states in America treat COVID very differently. In fact, if you go to somewhere like Texas, that you're probably more concerned with a new with new extreme weather warnings that's been issued about Texas than you are about COVID. So let's bring on Siobhan, who's one of our contributors, just to find out how things are going there. Siobhan, how you doing?
Hey, to answer your question, how things going over here is, you know, they have opened things up. So it's interesting to see that you all are actually on a lockdown and we are doing whatever the hell we want to do.
So what state are you in? And you know, how do you think your state is, say, coping compared to, you know, other places? Like I just mentioned Texas there. It's been reported there that it's almost as though there is no COVID in Texas.
And it's almost as like there's no COVID in Illinois. I'm in Illinois right now. I'm in Springfield. And part of the reason is people are so freaking scary of closing down the state, closing down entities, because next year, or is it this year, it's an election year for our governor. And the governor's not going to shut it back down, because all around, like in central and southern Illinois, people are saying Pritzker sucks, which is our J.B. Pritzker is our governor. But in all totality, these governors, these mayors, other public officials had no guide in how to deal with this. So they did whatever was the best thing going. I know a lot of small businesses are shut down officially because they couldn't bounce back from it. But the restaurants are open, the bars are open. I mean, limited capacity, but if you call ahead of time, it's like nothing happened. Drinks.
Thank you for that. We'll check in with you in a few more minutes.
Are there still flights going to the US? Was it Illinois she said she was in? I might try and get there.
I think you can only fly for official reasons. So I would have to report you if you are planning to make that travel.
If there's any company in Illinois that wants to invite me over as a poet, as a writer, performer, theatre maker, please do DM me or visit my website, please, and you can pay. I'll pay for my own flight.
So when you make the theatre, Afshan, who's gonna watch it? How's it gonna be watched?
I've got a play on next week on Zoom, online, where
really
people are in their separate Zoom boxes, and actually you can still in the States. They're doing a lot of quarantining people together, or people in bubbles, or the actors and actresses sort of share a bubble, and they kind of do it either on stage and then broadcast that live, or you still have live theatre audiences that are socially distanced while they're sat down.
Very interesting, right?
Isn't it just? It's amazing. And I feel like the travel is one thing, and but then in the UK we've got this other issue about UK travelers, people coming to the UK, and we talked about this last time. The hotel quarantine policy that you sort of mentioned earlier, Mike, being ended by May. There are so far 1,500 people that have arrived into the UK from the red list countries, and they're paying £1,750 for a 10-day quarantine to stay in hotels. People, anecdotal quotes about this. Someone said it's like a prison with a good bed. Someone says you've got to play cards, read books, and sleep for 10 days. That's it. In the end, I think we will find ourselves depressed. It feels, you can see from the images, it's not the most pleasant experience, or the pleasant hotel, I guess. Health Secretary Matt Hancock said that the process so far was working smoothly. So he believes that, there's kind of measly lunch dinners that we were seeing being served in the hotel was going smoothly. But what do you think, Mike? What do you...
Do I think it's going smoothly?
Do you think it's going smoothly? Do you think the hotel quarantine policy is a good idea?
Well, I think the most important thing about this is that they're able to quarantine. I'm not really interested in whether they get 3-course meals or 2-course meals, or it's in that. That's, I mean, it's not. These aren't human rights violations. I mean, it's in the middle of a global pandemic. People just need to be able to quarantine. That's kind of what my thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, but then you do have students coming over as well that are coming to study in the UK, and they're then being forced to, go into a hotel for 10 days and live there and work from there. It's an additional cost for each and every person that's coming through. So I think there is slightly problematic, actually.
So you think it should be free, or?
I don't think it should be free. I think it's definitely.
How many types of free are there?
I don't know. Okay, so 10 days in a hotel would not cost you 1,750 quid.
It's not just the hotel they're paying for.
And what's they paying for?
Security. Testing has to be done as well. I mean, there's a lot of costs that come with it. Of course, the government is making. Sorry, go ahead.
They pay extra for testing and extra for any. They put all the tests that they do. They pay extra for. So on top of that, they've got to do 2 tests. One when they come in to the country, and then one midway through their 10-day quarantine, and then I think another one before they're released out into the world anyway. So that's an additional 200 quid per test that you're looking at. I
don't know the numbers, but I know security is also included as well in the price they're paying. Transport is included as well in that they have to be transport. Someone has to be paid for watching them and stuff like that. The government has conceded that they make money for it. Like, the government does make a profit from this system. But I don't know the figures to say this is the amount they should be paying. It should be 1,400. I don't know that.
Would it deter you from going somewhere if you had to pay $2,000?
Should I say what would deter me? The fact that it's a global pandemic. I don't know who's still making.
You hadn't planned at all to travel anywhere.
I did plan to travel, and that was chucked in the bin once I realized that I can't travel. The fact that I've been told to only travel right now for legal or emergency reasons. Seeing my parents is not an emergency. Going to see my niece is not an emergency. So for me, I've been pretty okay with that so far. Well, there's a really interesting story that we covered on Common Sense, and folks, some of the stories we're talking about, you can actually find out if you go to tcsnetwork.co.uk. That's tcsnetwork.co.uk. You can read these stories. And the interesting thing about the way we do our articles is we have multiple people with different perspectives contributing to the piece. So one of the stories that also I want to highlight this week was about Priti Patel and Black Lives Matter. It actually happened last week, where on a show in the UK called LBC, it's a radio show, the Home Secretary called in and she described the Black Lives Matter protest as dreadful, and she also criticized taking the knee. We've got an article live right now where myself and a brilliant journalist we have, Aaron, also we talk about what we think about the topic. But it's so interesting to me because for folks who don't know Priti Patel, she's pretty known for saying all sorts of kind of problematic things. She's been involved in scandals of deporting people without due process and just lots of odd things. Let's put it that way. But what's really interesting about this story is that some people are shocked by what she said, because remember last year everyone was saying Black Lives Matter, everyone was taking the knee. She's waited a year thereabouts, and we're about to reach the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And this is when she chooses to almost rub salt into the wounds of Black people and say, oh, actually, it's dreadful. Taking the knee is dreadful. What do you think about this? When you read it, Afshan, what were your thoughts?
Standard Priti Patel. I don't expect anything more from her. She stands for everything that stands against everything that I stand for. Her stance on immigration, her stance on race, her stance on equality in that sense is so flawed that it doesn't surprise me, actually. It doesn't surprise me that she's anti-Black Lives Matter or that she calls protesters thugs. I'm just like, oh, it's just Priti Patel being Priti Patel. It's a bit like Trump, when Trump was doing Trump-esque stuff, you're like, oh, terrible, but also very on brand for Trump. This is very on brand for Priti Patel, unfortunately.
On that, let's bring in Aaron, who was actually contributed to the article. Aaron, what do you think about Priti Patel, what she's saying, what she did? What are your thoughts?
I mean, it's a tricky one, because I feel like it's kind of a loaded question, because it's based on the assumption that because she's in a position of Home Secretary, that she's kind of obligated to think and say certain things. She's a person, first and foremost, and as such is entitled to her opinion. She's also not the only person of color or BMAE ethnicity to disagree with Black Lives Matter and the movement and the incredible scenes that we've seen last year. We talk about how Black Lives Matter is an only anti-racist organization when there's clearly not the case. People have been researching and how the founders of Black Lives Matter have they have Marxist tendencies. They say they want to do things like destroy capitalism and destroy the nuclear family and this sort of stuff. So to call it an anti-racist movement first and foremost and solely is a misnomer. And, as secretary, she's obviously going to defend the British people. And when you see what's happened last year with police officers being assaulted and everything, of course she's not going to say she supports Black Lives Matter when Black Lives Matter are responsible for some of the incredible scenes that we saw last year around Trafalgar Square.
Now, I know that Afshan disagrees. So, Afshan, I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts or response to that?
I just want to you on the point that because she's a person in power, she's entitled to her own opinion. But when that opinion affects the lives of the people that she's supposed to be serving, that's when I can have an issue with it. If her kind of understanding and labeling Black Lives Matter protesters as thugs is going to end up with more Black people, Asian people that are protesting, being charged or being arrested, being stopped and searched more because they're being seen as thugs, then that affects me. That bothers me. That's an opinion that she holds, that actually she is in a position of power to be able to make policy. And she's done it. Her anti-immigration stance, her, xenophobic ideas has led to this country. I don't know if it's led to it, but she's definitely had a part in the xenophobic attitudes that have come out. So I definitely would challenge her opinion. And I don't think that just because she's in a position of power, she's allowed to have an opinion.
Can I just throw something back at you then, Afshan, especially on this topic? So one of the things that Priti Patel said is that there are many, many ways to show your opinion or to show your support for an issue. Now, you'll remember last year, I don't want to go too much into this, but this is interesting because last year we saw scenes all over social media of Black Lives Matter protesters go into malls or like shopping centers and demanding that white people say Black Lives Matter. And when they didn't say that, they would surround them. And we saw some videos of some of the protesters intimidating people to say Black Lives Matter, to get on their knees, to kind of do things a very particular way. What about action like that? Because maybe you don't agree with her as a person, but what she said about how there are many different ways to show your support for a cause that doesn't involve taking the knee. Do you agree with that, or do you think that's also not true?
I think you're right when you say there's many different ways and you can show support, and that should be full stop, blankets. That's it. That's a statement. There shouldn't be a caveat to that. You can't say except for doing this or except for doing that. I think when you look at the way that some protests have become a little bit more aggravated or a little bit, they've turned into riots in some cities or some places, there is a reason for that. It's because, the London riots that happened here in 2011 was because of the way that the community was being unfairly seen to, but there was a lot of tension at that time. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I think that people will do what they need to do out of a given situation, and everybody has a right to be able to show their support in whichever way they do. If it's taking the knee, it's taking the knee. If it's going on marches, it's going on marches. If it's going on, putting a black square on Instagram, we can challenge that and say, mate, what are you going to do next? But that's what they're doing. We can't be like.
I still can't believe and folks, today we're going to be talking about social media, and so we can talk a bit about that black square. I still can't believe that was a moment. But Aaron, final word on this. What do you think about it, or Priti Patel, Black Lives Matter, the UK context?
I think that taking the knee has become synonymous with Black Lives Matter. And when you see, like we said, Black Lives Matter all over the world, not just in the UK, but all over the world, going into suburban neighborhoods, telling people to get on their knees and all this kind of stuff, taking the knee becomes a gesture that is associated with that. And it represents a sense of lawlessness and chaos. And if she was to support that, it would almost be political suicide. It would be to suggest that she supports this amount of chaos and lawlessness and violence, and she just can't do that. It's just simple as that.
Yeah.
It would be difficult suicide.
I mean, you're totally right. Thank you so much for joining us for this section. There's something to be said there about how what we should be expecting from people who are in government, right? Especially the Home Secretary, who her whole stick is law and order. So the day I see her going, actually, death to the system, you go, what? Hold on, the system.
I don't need her to.
You are the embodiment of the system.
Wait. I don't need it to kind of go death to the system, but what I needed to do is not create the very issues that cause people to need to protest, that cause people to need to be violent. And she can do that by not being. I can't think of a word that's not rude to define it. By not being a horrible person, she can do that by not being anti-immigration. She can do that by not being.
I don't think. Hold on. But like, when you say horrible person, what do you mean by that?
I want to say something else, but I didn't want to say it because I'm on social media. I just think that her attitude towards people of color and Black people is quite racist. I think it's quite xenophobic. I think we've seen that with her anti-immigration policies. We've seen it with her pro-policing stance in the way that she talks about it. And now the labeling of Black Lives Matter protesters as thugs that's pretty on brand for Priti Patel. That's the issue, is that she doesn't get challenged on that enough. And she's able to kind of like slide through life and going, well, I'm an Asian woman, I'm a diverse person in politics. No, mate, that's not it. There's more to it than that.
Got you. Fair. All fair points. Folks, before we move on to the big debate, just want to give you a chance to share the stream. Again, if you're listening to us, send it to 3 or 4 of your friends, get them involved, because we want to talk about something really important that affects every single one of us. So get involved, get your thoughts stuck in. And yeah, over to you, Afshan.
So we are talking about the mainstream media versus the new media. We're talking about whether the public, whether you, whether I, Mike, anybody here, do we actually trust the mainstream media, or are we very skeptical of it? A new study by the YouGov poll of 1,650 people found that 66% of UK public do not trust TV journalists, and 75% of the public don't trust newspaper journalists. And I don't know if you've been watching the news today, but the BBC has come under fire for its hostile interview with the leader of the Muslim Council of Britain, which happened on Women's Hour a couple of weeks back. And a quote and a letter was put forward. 200 journalists, activists, writers have signed that letter as well. So it just goes to show that actually there's way more distrust in the UK right now of mainstream media than there is of anything else. People are moving to social media to find information about things. Mike, you run Common Sense Network, I guess, like as an alternative source of media. What do you think about this?
I mean, so a part of me wants to get into the specifics of that interview, because I watched the interview and I disagree with those journalists that said she was mistreated. Yep, I do.
Why do you disagree?
We can go into that in great detail, which I look forward to. But before we go into that, I think more generally speaking, what we must kind of be careful to do before we get into the debate even is to ensure that we're not too nostalgic, or no, nostalgic isn't even the term, but we don't rose tint the vision we have of social media. This notion that social media is going to save the day and save us from the mainstream media that's driven by 5 billionaires, I think it's a bit flawed for a number of different reasons. It's the same social media that has influenced the last 4 elections in ways we did not think could be the case, both in the UK, in America, and pretty much around the world. We saw Cambridge Analytica. We saw the mining of data and social media. We've seen the rise of tech conglomerates, really, that run the way we think about communication. Their leadership is typically opaque, and on top of that, we have no clue how they make decisions. This idea that that social media is the savior. Let's not forget, it's the same social media that fake news is perpetrated on. Same social media that doxing occurs. There's so much to go through. Same social media that's actually harming young people, right? Because it's Instagram is having to remove likes because literally young people's mental health is being destroyed. So I don't want us to kind of have this kind of mainstream media is bad, social media good discussion. I think we should get into the nuance and really work out what each are good for and how we have a liberal democratic process that actually benefits us all. So we can start there, and then I'm more than happy to go into that debate if you want to do that.
I do think though that social media has helped and done things that mainstream media hasn't done, and I think that we could already see that with protests over the years that have not been reported or purposefully been left up by mainstream media because of other agendas. Leckygate, you're talking about NSARS, we're talking about Black Lives Matter. Pre George Floyd, even Black Lives Matter protests was something that weren't being reported by the mainstream media. It is through social media that so much stuff has happened. There's conversation about the internet and social media and its play in the Arab Spring and in sort of like uprisings across the world. So I think that we can't say that social media hasn't done anything at all, but I think we can, and maybe you're right, maybe the debate isn't about social media versus mainstream media, but is about what is mainstream media not doing that social media is doing, and how do we either just get rid of mainstream media completely and change social media and make social media, because the difficulty with mainstream media is that it's singular narratives by singular organizations, and that's it. Whereas like the social media is, singular platforms with multiple sources, multiple pieces of information, multiple perspectives. And that's the difference, is that you have to physically leave your house and, find The Guardian, find the Metro, find the Sun, find the Daily Star, and all the papers in order to get a different perspective. And even then, you're still getting a singular narrative from each and every one of those papers. Whereas with social media, I can go on Twitter, right? And on Twitter, there are like millions of different perspectives that differ from myself.
And there could be millions of bad perspectives, unchecked perspectives, unfettered perspectives, fake perspectives.
But so can the news. So can,
not in the same way. My auntie having a go on Facebook is not the same as a journalist that spent 3 years at university researching a story that's been fact-checked by multiple editors.
But the fact-checking part is where I would challenge you.
I agree with you that they're different, and so I agree with you that they're similar in that it's people speaking, but I don't think you could say they're the same. I don't think you could say everyone on Twitter is just the same as having a credible news network that has a complaints procedure, that has that you've got the National Union of Journalists. I mean, there's a whole process between when it comes to broadcast and journalism and stuff like that. I take your point.
Is that when it's a person on social media, it's that person's opinion and their own agenda. When it's a newspaper, it's a newspaper's entire agenda. And we've seen that recently with the article posted about Meghan Markle and Prince Harry. And I think that the difficulty with the article is that I think it was the Daily Star what have they done? They've purposefully made a point out of something. They're racist in that article, in the way that they've completely written about Meghan Markle over the years. That is what I'm talking about.
In that article,
that's the gender of the paper, not the person.
So you think they're racist in the article they wrote about Meghan Markle? What's racist? What's racist about
the way that they have been?
No, I'm talking about this article we just saw, where it says that woman who likes privacy announces her birth to 7-point-something billion people. What part of that is racist?
Taking the piss, right? That's what it's doing. So maybe it's not racist in a direct way, but indirectly, it's definitely a microaggression. There's
what did they do to everybody?
Hold on, but this is the point though, that you wouldn't do it with anybody else. You wouldn't do it if you, Mike, went to them.
What?
If you, Mike, had gone to them and done this particular thing, or no, not like you, Mike. I don't know. Sam, the white guy next door, had done this, they would not have acted in the same way as they have done with Meghan. And in fact, we can see it in the way that they have.
I'm black as well.
Yeah, that's why I said Sam, the white guy next door.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so I changed it up, Mike. I changed it up. Talking about Sam, the white guy next door. But look, enough about what I think on this matter. And this is the beauty of social media, because we're doing this on social media. Let's bring out some other perspectives, because this isn't about me and my gender.
I think you're getting off the hook here, because I've got questions for you. But let's bring on Michael and Pofi, who's our political editor. I know Michael takes a keen interest in the royals. I heard, rumor is, folks, that Michael actually collects pictures of Meghan Markle, and he's got a little kind of folder where he keeps them. Is this true, Mike?
That is absolutely not true. But maybe I should. But look, great discussion to you both, and thanks for having me. I will say this, I found it highly intriguing. Yes, it was during the Trump presidential run, But I did find it highly intriguing when we got to see, forgive the reference, but big tech. So Jack Dorsey, Zuckerberg, and that chap from Google, I forget his name, before Congress. And the reality there was that there was a real discussion, which I think is a pertinent conversation. The pertinent conversation that needs to be had is this: social media cannot have the benefits of being the publisher without responsibility. And this is where I agree with MT as far as it comes to the example you use. Instagram is having to take away likes because they're destroying or affecting young people's mental health. So you can't give people the freedom and the opportunity to say whatever they like. But when it comes to accepting the responsibility, you kind of back away and say, well, actually, we're just a platform. And I think for me, I love the access that social media has given and the opportunity has given to voices like ourselves. But I do think there needs to be a conversation about how, and I'm going to say the dirty R word, regulate. I know no one likes to hear that because, oh, why are you trying to put brakes on us? But it's there for our own good. And the perfect example, actually, is the story about Meghan Markle and the court case that she won against, I believe it was Metro, if I'm not mistaken. It's a perfect example. You can't just say whatever you will about somebody without checks and balances. So yes, let's have social media come into the mix, definitely. But let's do it in a way that, I can regulate and verify. If I'm going to report something about MT or yourself, Asha, I need to be able to say, have I done my due diligence as a responsible journalist so that I'm not just another guy peddling my own nonsense, QAnon, and anyone else. So I think there's something to be said there about the need to really bring social media not into the mainstream space, but into a regulatory space that allows us to have the confidence that whatever I'm reading is accurate.
Yeah, I want to bring on Hamish to join the conversation as well. Hamish is one of our writers at Common Sense. What are your thoughts on this? I mean, there's something we probably need to also put on the table, which is this fact that the term mainstream is probably a bit of a misnomer too, because when it comes to audience size, some of these online news shows, platforms actually command a greater audience than the broadcast networks. So in a way, they're more mainstream. Maybe this is time to introduce some helpful terms, like I heard some American academics use, which is they would call the mainstream media legacy media, and they would call these new online social media ones are new media. So that way it's legacy and new and not so much mainstream and like quirky. But anyways, on that, Mish, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, thank you for thank you for inviting me onto this show. I think it's a double-edged sword, if I'm being honest, with social media, because I do love social media because it allows lots of voices. I think this is kind of similar to what Ashlan's been saying, like lots of different voices, lots of different stories that I don't think get enough attention for it. But I also think on the flip side, I think social media has allowed and bred stories like misinformation massively. I think we've seen through the coronavirus since like conspiracy theories like QAnon, and the fact that you got bots that could infiltrate our elections, like the EU referendum potentially, or even like the US presidential election. So it's just really tricky because it's kind of like on the plus side, it can allow loads of different voices and different stories that are not getting the attention from mainstream media, quote unquote. But it also allows different stories that I don't think are false and fake information. And I agree with Michael to an extent in terms of, in terms of the like moderating of content. However, I'm wary because I find that Facebook, once they moderate a lot of content, they're like the ones that like the gatekeepers of information, and they can decide what is allowed to be posted and what's not allowed to be posted. And I find that is a very, very scary prospect. Yeah. Massively, like that's what I feel. But I also do agree that there needs to be a moderation. Like Parler, for example, got banned because of the fact they haven't moderated their content, and it allowed the US Capitol riots to happen. And I think Clubhouse as well is another big mention. They need to, I think, be careful in terms of moderating their content, because I know China has already banned that Clubhouse because of having taboo subjects. So I think I do definitely agree with Michael's comment about like moderating content. But to condense my viewpoint, I think social media is a double knife-edged sword, if that makes sense. Sorry, that's such a tangent. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Michael, go ahead. You want to jump in?
Yeah, no, thanks, MT and Hamish. Yeah, appreciate you raising that, because I'm going to say something incredibly controversial.
Oh, not on this show.
Here's the
Not on
thing.
this show.
No, but Hamish, you raise a good point. We're going to go there, right? Because we're having a well-rounded discussion. You know, the fact that Jack Dorsey can wake up one day and decide, and when I talk about regulation, Hamish, I'm just talking about the same rules applying to everybody. Just to clarify that, because you're spot on. Jack Dorsey cannot be the single arbiter who decides whether he wants Trump on his social media platform or not. Like, that is insane. Like, I'm not a Trump supporter, I'm not MAGA, whatever, but the fact that you can decide tomorrow morning you don't want the former US president on your platform indefinitely, that is just mental. So I think the point for me is, let's have a regulatory framework, but let's do it in such a way that one rule applies to all. And again, I come back to the core.
Whose rule would that be, Michael?
Yeah, because, and that's a good point. So the mainstream media are regulated by the ombudsman, right? If you've got a gripe, there are certain rules that are clearly articulated by the ombudsman as to what the threshold and the standard of reporting should be.
Yeah.
Something similar will be put in place for social media just to avoid this kind of arbitrary rule enforcement whenever people feel like it.
No, what I'm asking is which country's rule should apply to all of social media.
That's the big key one.
Thing about publishing, that the rule with book publishing is that the rights are with a particular country, because then those laws and rules have to abide by that country. What happens when you have a situation where the government of a particular country does not want a particular idea or a particular ideology to spread, for example, Black Lives Matter, and decides, you know what, anything that comes up with a hashtag BLM, we're just going to censor it. We're going to censor it out completely, and that is going to be our rule, and that's going to be our law. That's a version of regulation. And actually what that leads to is a lot of people not having access to the information they need. So I'm going to ask you again, whose regulatory power should come into place over all of social media?
Well, this is difficult.
That's a tough question, though. It's a good question.
Hold on 1 minute, folks. Because I feel like a referee here in the WrestleMania, because I've got people waiting to be tagged on. I've got people currently going on. I'm trying to do it. It's hard, the referee's job. So before we tackle that point, which I think is super important, I want to bring on Aaron and Siobhan here, who also contribute to that common sense. And you know, folks, don't feel like you have to say something straight away. But this topic is interesting because one of the reasons why social media companies have been so hard to regulate or to really kind of work on is because they do have random offices, you know, on an island, and then they operate throughout all over the world, you know, basically evading all the different regulations, right? So it's difficult. We all recognize it's difficult, but without getting too drawn away from the conversation here, the question essentially, I think, just so we return to it, because I think it's quite important, is, you know, is social media the good that it almost seems like we're making it out to be? I'm talking here to Afshan particularly, and I think it's only you, Afshan, that's kind of said about, you know, the fact that it helped out in the Arab Springs, right? But is it this good? And I don't think you're alone. In fact, let me read you a quick stat. You know, between 2019 and 2020, a YouGov poll found that 63% of people they polled said that they were using social media more. So more people are using social media, but get this. 61%, right, said that they're more scared about their privacy. 33% more said that they felt that they were less in control. And let's talk about influencers really quickly. 4% said they trusted influencers. So people are trusting social media less, but somehow they're using it more. I mean, you can see why it's hurting people's mental health, right? You're using something you hate more and more and more. How can that be good for anyone?
It was a bit like when TVs first came out. There was this whole idea.
I don't remember that. I'm too. What?
Sorry, I'm too young too. Okay, but we can hypothetically go back into our history books. Pretend when TVs first came out, there was this assumption that if you watch TV too long, your eyesight would get bad. You know, and there's definitely comparisons, maybe kind of like graphs and to be drawn about the TV and maybe general health of people in terms of like the amount of time that we're sitting at home watching TV on our sofas, right? So obviously it's going to affect us in that way. Obviously there's going to be something negative coming out of it, because that's just the nature of when something new is being introduced, something negative is definitely going to come out of it. The interesting thing about this is that we always focus on the negative of social media, but not about how the positive has actually overcome it. The fact is that this stream, this conversation that we're having is, 1, 2, 3, 4 of us have got our social media @ in our names, right? We haven't even got our actual names in. We're just known by our @. This is on Facebook, it's on Periscope, it's on YouTube. Those are social medias. In fact,
don't forget to subscribe.
Social media, yeah, like, share, subscribe, guys. But like without those social media, gotta get it in there.
Sorry, I feel like Donald Trump.
we would not be able to be having this conversation. So I'm like, what do you want then, that we don't have social media? If you want to go through mainstream media, let's just say majority of the people that are on this call right now, first of all, wouldn't get in through the door in mainstream media in terms of writing journalism articles, in terms of being on a show to talk about something, because we might not have a journalism background or a degree. We might not have, 25 years of experience of writing it. And, majority of us on this call are not old white men. And that's
but Afshan, let's throw something straight to you. This is something that I think ROE said, and Siobhan and Aaron, feel free to jump in. Take the unfortunate case of Caroline Flack. This was a presenter. I think she presented Love Island, if I'm correct. She then got lots of an X Factor, but she received, if I'm correct, lots of hatred online. Really unfortunate situation. She ended up committing suicide, if I'm correct, because of the bullying and everything she was facing. The question is, in a case like that, of course, we can't really say who's to blame, because ultimately, we don't know the kind of depths of the story. But as far as responsibility goes, what part does social media versus the kind of tabloids we often talk about, what part do they have to play? Interesting stat for you. Everyone talks about how Meghan Markle is being, attacked by mainstream media. She definitely has been. However, as of last year, she received the most, I think either the most or the second most negative tweet on Twitter. That's from individual people tweeting about her.
And that's people. You're right. And I think that with social media, it's not an entity, social media. We can't treat them all the same. There are people behind those tweets. There's people behind those Facebook messages. And I think that is a key difference for me between social media and mainstream media. Whereas mainstream medias that exist, the papers that exist are institutions. They're literally owned by 5 people, own the papers in the UK, the print journalism, even the TV journalism that we see. That is an institution. So if a journalist was to say something that was to directly or indirectly have affected, say, for example, with Caroline Flack, it wouldn't be that journalist. It would be the organization's responsibility for that. With social media, it is essentially a platform for people to say what they want to say as and when they want to say it. That's it.
No matter how, like I said, you do it or whatever. So you're just saying that anybody can say anything about that person, to the fact that somebody's going to commit suicide.
No, not at all. Not at all. I'm just saying it's a different kind of regulation, because then you're asking about people, and you're asking about, language to be monitored. You're asking about racist or discriminatory language to be filtered out. You're asking for censorship, which is very different from asking about a mainstream media. If a journalist was to write something, you would then attack that mainstream media, the newspaper, for example, for coming in. Aaron, you don't have to put your hand up, just chime in.
Aaron, why did you
do like last week, honestly. Just jump in.
We don't interrupt.
We need to wave hand signal.
At some stage, Aaron's always going to do this.
It's built into me. I'm sorry.
We need a Zoom wave hand signal.
I didn't want to be rude and interrupt Afshan. That's why.
That's okay.
It's just built into me. But yeah, I was gonna say, it's not that I believe that these social media shouldn't be regulated. It's just about what regulation is, because it's a very tricky one. There's a fine line between sharing an opinion and a person being exempt from scrutiny. So a lot of people, for example, are tweeting about negative tweets about Meghan Markle. Even if that's the case, apart from things such as death threats, harassment, things like that, people should have every right to say what they feel. I don't feel that we should go one step further and try to make certain people exempt from criticism and scrutiny in the way that Caroline Flack kind of was. Because with respect to Caroline Flack, when she was on X Factor and Love Island and everything was happy day roses Nickelodeon, she wasn't talking about regulation then, wasn't talking about bullying then. But as soon as all this stuff starts happening about her boyfriend and this, that, the other, that's when people are calling for her thing. It's like I don't understand.
But where's the line, though? Where's the line? Because now we're going off to the point of view. Because what you may think is an opinion could be hurtful to somebody else, i.e., why suicide happens.
Yeah,
it's an entirely subjective thing. This is the whole point. But when it start to go around that line between subjective on the objective, because there's a line that you can't cross. When you try to play around with the idea as in what is subjective, what is objective, once you cross that line, it means there are always going to be people who feel their opinions are not as recognized or as heard or as represented in mainstream as other opinions.
Sorry, go on, Simone.
I bet you thought nothing was wrong with Donald Trump's tweet to go storm the Capitol.
Do you know what? Yeah, it was a bit suspect, but I don't think it was that bad. I don't think so. I don't think it was that bad. It was a bit suspect.
Hold on. I want to understand. What do you mean by suspect? What do you mean by that?
No, I mean in the sense that how do I put it carefully? I believe that he was partially culpable, as in, as the president, you kind of have a responsibility to, if someone's doing something wrong in your name, you have a responsibility, a moral obligation to say, no, this is wrong. But I don't think that this is the person who decided to told these people to literally go and storm the Capitol. These are two different things. To be culpable is to be directly guilty, if that makes sense. It's one thing for you to say to someone to go and do it.
Michael's got his hands up.
It's one thing for you to tell someone, to go and do something. It's another thing entirely for you to sit back and not do anything. I mean, can you be guilty for not doing something? It just don't make sense. If someone's about to get hit by a car out the road,
try and get as many of us in before we run out of time. Go on, Michael.
No, of course. Look, great points all around. But just to latch on to what Aaron's saying there, because what the question from Siobhan was perfect. You've got a school of thought that I would imagine, is maybe right of center or slightly right of center or far right, whatever. And then you've also got a school of thought that's far left or slightly left. My biggest issue with this whole discussion is that it's not sexy or cool to talk about the fact that actually people on both sides are probably not willing to admit what regulation looks like and feels like, because to them it feels like censorship. So MAGA all you want, but then let's talk about responsibility around the police. Which, by the way, black cops didn't kill white people storming the Capitol, right? And then inversely, we want to talk about BLM, and then white police officers are going, well, they were causing an uproar. The point I'm making is this: what we're trying to do here, my friends, is it's uncharted waters, right? We've never had to think about regulating the internet in our lives. It's like the fight that the banks are having with Bitcoin. Sorry, I had to slide it in, but they literally don't know what to do, right? And it's for good reason. It's for good reason. We've never been here before. Well,
here's the thing, folks. I have one regulation we can all agree on right now, and that is that before you start a room on Clubhouse, you have to take a test. You have to take a political, you have to literacy test.
Yeah, I agree.
That's a very
it's a test.
Perspective. Why?
No, hold on. I didn't say what type of test. I didn't say what type of test.
Corey made a good point.
You assumed that it's a elitist test.
I don't test well. That's elitist to me. Okay, what type of test do you want me to now take before I can try?
I think.
Go on, Hamish. Go on, Hamish.
Hold on. You have to first explain what type of test is it that you're expecting people to take.
All sorts of tests. A kind of just a reasoning test would be a good start, I think. Followed by if you're gonna start with a politics, just a political literacy one might be good. Just so we have a general understanding of what's going on. I don't think that's elitist at all. But sorry, go on, Hamish.
You know what I think? I think you know what this is calling for? I think it's calling for an internet bill of rights, in my eyes. I think we need to know what we're allowed to say, what we're not allowed to say, and we cannot be decided by these big tech companies like Facebook, Twitter. I think it should be decided by the courts themselves. Now, I think you have to then ask yourselves, well, what laws do we actually put ourselves in? Because every single country in the world has different laws. So I actually think the United Nations, for example, needs some sort of world organization. I don't know. Okay, maybe not United Nations, but you know what I'm trying to say? Look, I'm trying to say like a world organization that can actually, sit down and say, right, what laws can we actually have in place?
Fourth Revolution. Check out the fourth group in the Fourth Revolution where they're talking about regulating the internet. Really?
Interesting. I'll have to check that out.
The legal perspective, in terms of how do we stop organizations that we like online, Twitter and Facebook, from using our data and doing what they want with it? What sort of regulation can we bring in that allows for, that doesn't allow for example, a country to censor in the way that some countries are doing already, but does allow for some sort of like broad, cross-agency kind of system that everyone has to abide by.
Absolutely.
It's really not some kind of digital Interpol though.
Hold on, there's a lot to say about like world organizations and censorship. It's obviously a very, very uncomfortable topic for some people. America would love it, of course, because it's another organization they can dominate. China would love it as well. So small country myself. But you know what? I just realized I had a go at telling you how I would change social media or change. If you all could change social media in one way and implement one rule, what kind of rule would it be? I already said mine. Mine is Clubhouse chats. To start one, you have to pass a list of tests. That's just for me. What did Barack Obama do? What's a president? All that kind of stuff. With you guys, have a think about it. What would you do? I think this is a nice light bit to end on. Go ahead, Mish.
I would link. Oh, go on, Hamish.
It's okay.
His hand up. That's
sorry. I say no. It's okay. Don't worry about it. I would put an age limit and say you have to be, I think, more older than 16 to actually get a social media account, or 18. I don't know, one of the two. I think they actually should be, because once you do that, you can actually, I think because I don't think a 14-year-old, for example, should have social media right now. I don't think.
So you
and a 40-year-old who has nothing
to vote at 16. Hold on. So you can vote at 16, and you can have. It is 16, isn't it? 16, 18. What's the voting age? Voting age is 18.
18. Yeah, 18. Well, okay.
So basically, this is why you have to pass a test before you can start any.
No, you
Ashton,
can
no Clubhouse.
Ashton, let Ashton speak. Let Ashton speak. Come on.
That's where I was going. You can have sex at 16 and have children. But you can't. Legally.
That does not make sense. Just because you can have sex.
No. I get Ashton's point. No. I get Ashton's point though.
You're allowed. You legally.
Yeah.
You can have sex at 16.
Everyone's put their hand up at this point.
Right?
But yeah,
so
sorry.
I'm asking, like, you're saying that social media age limit should be 18, but you can have sex at 16.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's because we need to question like why the age limit is. That's the thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
But a 40-year-old doesn't have that
Siobhan, your audio, Siobhan, your audio's a bit low. Is there any way you can maybe move closer to the mic? Because I'm struggling to hear you just a little bit.
Can you hear me now?
Well, it sounds like you're whispering.
Okay, can you hear me? No.
It's difficult, but go ahead.
I was saying, okay, so what makes you think a 40-year-old man can be any more intelligent than somebody who's 16?
Age, experience.
Damn. Okay. Yeah. I mean, the thing is, you know a bit more life experience at this point, surely.
From older people than I have from younger people.
You got what? So let's try again.
Stuff has come from older people rather than younger people. So when you're talking about like, whether older people have more common sense, I don't think age is the factor here.
All right, let's move straight on to Michael. Michael, what would you change? What's the one thing you would change in your ideal world?
Yeah, I think I would actually make people sign legally binding contracts to be held responsible for whatever they say or do online. Because that's what I do. Because if I could be sued for defaming my neighbor in real life, that should apply everywhere I go. And it also, I think it'll give people something to think about before they tweet or say something crazy on the internet. I promise you.
That's an interesting one. Afshan, what would you do?
I had an idea that we'd link all the social medias and your like ID together, but then that stops people that are in danger, for example. So a lot of queer communities, a lot of people that are surviving domestic abuse, for example, that will find their communities online won't be able to use that. But it would be so much easier if everyone's real Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, only one account of each of them. We don't want no finsters here. We're all linked together. And then you could see who was who. And it was all, if you could complain to somebody about Facebook, then, you could block them on Facebook and they'd be blocked on Twitter and Instagram and email, all of it linked. And in real life, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Aaron?
An interesting question, because yesterday, I think it was either today or yesterday, Boris Johnson announced this new legislation to stop deplatforming at universities, where freedom of basically intellectual and ideological and academic diversity must be encouraged, instead of people being deplatformed and uninvited from lectures and stuff because their opinions are not seen as quote unquote woke enough. And I think that rule should apply on the internet. There should be a sort of an anti-digital detox where people should be allowed to express their opinions, no matter how controversial, obscene they might be. People must be allowed to express their opinions, as long as it's not. It depends what the law says about freedom of speech, about where the line is drawn. But basically, I think there should be a digital version of what we have in terms of freedom of speech, where in the same way the government cannot arrest you for saying certain things, I don't think these private companies should be able to ban you for saying certain things as well, in my opinion.
The notion that if it's not illegal, then it shouldn't be ban worthy. No, I get that.
100%. 100%.
Siobhan, what would you change? You're now on mute, Siobhan, I believe.
Oh no.
Oh no. After a year of Zoom.
I sound like a baby boomer when I say this, but gosh darn, I can't stand this damn technology. But I'm just like, I don't know if it's a contract or anything like that, but there has to be somewhere where people need to research what they say on social media, not just put any and everything on there. Let it be supplemented with some actual truth and facts.
That is fair. I think if we take all those changes together, we would have probably a better. So, I mean, probably based on what we think, maybe worse or not. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, Aaron. I see your hand, but we ran out of time. And so we have to end this debate here. Before we end it, though, Afshan, what are your thoughts on some of these suggestions from these amazing people we've just had on this show? What do you think?
I was going to say, follow me on Twitter and Instagram.
This is the problem. No, but I do want to make a serious point, even as our guest can. And guest, feel free to type your idea too. I mean, if you could change social media, if you could change it in one way, let us know what you think. But we definitely do need, I think, less noise out there. We are all inundated with noise, and one of the kind of exciting things about the work we do, I know it sounds like such a shame, such a plug, like, oh, of course you would at the end say this, but honestly, it's one of the things that excites me about the work we do, because the idea is, how do we get rid of the noise and help you to just understand what's actually happening? I think that's a very powerful thing. So if you want to join, it is join.tcsnetwork.uk. It is free. You're not going to be forced. There's no party that's going to force you to do anything here, but check it out. But anyways, on that, it was a really interesting discussion. Please like, subscribe, be a part of what we're doing here. But Afshan, what are your reflections following that conversation?
I'm quite serious. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. And I don't really have a YouTube, but I don't know. Social media is weird. We're kind of, especially now we're in lockdown, we're stuck at home, we have no other option. But for me anyway, to turn to social media, I'm living alone at the moment. I have to be online. I have to do Twitter and Instagram in order to connect with my friends and family and people that I love. So what else can I do, man? There isn't anything else. I will have to carry on using it. I just hope that at some point in the future, the racists and misogynists, homophobes, or transphobes, etc., are banned or censored. But that's all I can hope for. What about yourself?
Superb. Well, no, I love the discussion. I think it's so important. We could, of course, carry on talking about it because it's so important. We've got so many more shows coming out this week, though, so that you can take part in. We've got anything about politics coming on. I think it's with political commentator Darren Grimes. We've got moving parts. If you liked what our political editor was saying there, we're going to have him back and break down some more politics throughout the weekend. So there's lots of shows happening. And so I want to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's just the Common Sense Network. Subscribe, turn your notifications on so you're first to find out about videos we have. Our hope is that we can, contribute to less of the noise. But there you go. So thank you for joining us for this broadcast. Do share it. You can watch it back if you want to. That's all we have time for. I've been MT Omni. You've had Afshan the Souza Lodi with you. And that's it. We shall see you next week, same time at 7 p.m.